Welcome to the Free Birth Podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
Today on the show, we have the wise and wonderful Dominque. She chose a home birth with a midwife and doula for her first in the Bronx in New York. But upon reflection after the birth, she realized she would have preferred to have just been alone with her husband. So when she became pregnant with her second son and moved to Texas, it was an easy and intuitive decision for her to have a mostly unassisted pregnancy and then free birth. We talk about breastfeeding while in labor and what it was like for Dominque to tandem nurse her two young children for 2 years.
So my decision to have a home birth with my first son kind of came about a few years prior to me getting pregnant. I'm not really sure what the initial event that sparked it was. I just remember being on YouTube and I ran into some videos about home birth and natural childbirth. I learned all about midwifery and what a doula is. And I was so fascinated. I just kept reading books and watching more videos. I ran into some documentaries. And so when I did get pregnant with my first son, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that that's what I wanted to do. My partner, however, at the time, we weren't married. He was not at all in support of home birth. He was like, that's crazy. Like, no, I don't think it's safe. So I said, okay, let's watch some documentaries together. We also read The Birth Partner by Penny Simkin. And I'm trying to remember. I think we watched The Business of Being Born, a few other documentaries. And after that, he was more on board and we had some conversations. We took a 6-week holistic childbirth preparation course. So that was really intense. It was 3 hours every week. And they went over everything. It was really awesome. And we got to really delve into this idea of all aspects of childbirth and all different ways of birthing. And so he became really like one of my biggest advocates around this. And so the birth, I met my midwives in my second trimester. It was a team of midwives. And I also had a doula, but I didn't meet her until probably about 2 or 3 weeks prior to the birth.
And this was what state?
This was in Bronx, New York.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so the visits went well. Everything was going great. I felt like I had a pretty good relationship with my team of midwives. I had I'll say a better relationship with one of them than I did with the other. I just felt more of a connection with her. And unfortunately, during the birth, she had to go out of town. So I remember the labor was about 18 hours with my first son, and everything was so smooth. I mean, we had soft music going. We had a tub there. It was just very chill, very relaxed. And I felt very in control of my body. And I don't know, it was just something I had been preparing for so long. And it was very zen. And the second midwife, her energy was a little bit excitatory, I think. And so we kind of had a bit of a clash there to where I felt like I didn't really need so much assistance. I just kind of wanted to be left alone. But she kept trying to say, well, you need to do go on the squatting stool. And now we need to get you doing this and that. And so there was a bit of an energy clash there. And then she got scared that I was going to, I guess, have maternal exhaustion. And she kept mentioning that I might need a transfer. And I'm like, no, I'm fine. And I mean, yeah, I was tired, but I think I would have been fine. And so she's like, well, I recommend we do an assisted pushing. So I was like, okay, fine. We did that. And in the middle of while I was pushing, she kind of had a bit of, I guess, a breakdown because she wanted me to push a certain way and I was doing the best I could, but I was also trying to I don't know, it just got kind of crazy. And so everyone had to kind of tell her, look, it's okay, calm down. And I don't know, it's almost like the focus of the room went on to her for a bit of a second. And I'm like, hello, there's a baby here trying to come out. So that, I'll say that part of the labor was the last maybe 30 minutes of it was really, it took me a while to write my birth story after that because I was so angry. But then when I look back over the entire experience, it was beautiful. Like just the support I had from my doula was awesome. She was very good at keeping everybody calm, but also she was so attentive to me, and she helped me to remember all the different positions I could get into to be comfortable. My partner at the time, he was very supportive, and they just facilitated such a great environment for me to labor. And so I'm trying to recall everything because it's been a while, but it was just a really beautiful, relaxing experience. And even though I had that awkward moment with the midwife at the end, that doesn't speak to the whole experience. And I knew at that point that I think I would have been fine with just me, my partner, and possibly the doula. So then when I got pregnant the second time, I'm like, let's look into unassisted because I've been educating myself for so long about this process and newborn procedures and different herbs to take. And I mean, you name it, I could probably teach an entire course on preparing for childbirth. So I figured, I think I would be fine. And I know that what to look for if I reach a point where I'm not sure what to do, then, I'm open to being transferred or whatever. But I felt comfortable and confident in my body. So unassisted, we had gotten married. So my husband at the time, he was very okay with home birth. The unassisted, again, was a bit of a hurdle for him. And he's like, I'm not sure, are we qualified? What if something happens to the baby? And so, again, we went into a very educational period of reading blogs, reading books, and watching videos. And
he's like, I just got comfortable with home birth, dude.
Yeah, I was like, let's intensify this a bit.
Yeah.
And so, that was really cool. Just his openness to learn. And I kept having to kind of nudge him throughout the entire pregnancy, but he came around, let's say, the latter half of the third trimester to where he felt like, okay, we can do this, And also recalling the experience we had with the midwife, he kind of agreed with me that it would be better if we didn't have the distractions. And I'm grateful for, having birth professionals, but I just don't think I think that for me, being that I'm comfortable in my body, I know what I'm doing and I felt really confident, it would be best if it were just us.
Right. It's like this trade-off when you are comfortable and confident in your ability to do it, then really you would only have a midwife like in those just in case situations. So then it becomes this trade-off of, okay, yes, it would be nice to have someone here in a just in case, but then that price of admission is I have to have a stranger here possibly trying to interfere with my birth and get involved when I don't want, or do a trade out in the middle of the labor like you had. So it's interesting because it does wind up being this trade off of, is one really worth the other? And I think, like you, a lot of free birthers make this assessment that it's like, no, it's not worth it.
Right. And so my second birth, I think I had a prodromal labor, because now when I was reading through my birth story and kind of looking back over the Braxton Hicks and what I was going through the last few days before I actually went into labor, everyone told me that the second birth and on is going to be so much faster and everything just happened so quickly. And that was not my experience at all. So now I'm in Texas, where we ordered some supplies and things like that, a birthing pool, and made sure that we had things for the umbilical cord. And so here I am stocked with all my stuff. I had created some herbal preparations for perennial care after birth and things like that. So I was kind of just waiting around, twiddling my thumbs with this big belly, waiting for the baby to come. And I lost count. I think I was close to 42 weeks, which was the same with my first. And I went into labor one night. It was August 1st. My husband made this very spicy bowl of curry. And I don't know, I guess that's what sent me over the edge. And I started having very, very intense contractions. It wasn't so much like the first labor where with my first son, I had these kind of gradual surges where you can kind of feel it kind of tightening. And then it was very, very gradual, very graceful, and almost predictable. Whereas this was a completely different ball game. So I had one contraction, maybe 15 minutes later, I'd have another one. And then 17 to 20 minutes, I'd have another contraction. So I wasn't sure if I was in early labor, active labor, or what was going on because there was no pattern, but they were all a minute and a half in length. So, and they were intensifying. They just weren't getting closer together. So this went on pretty much through the whole night. I did the cat-cow yoga position because I think the baby was posterior. I had a lot of pressure in my lower back. And so I did that for a while until I needed to kind of change and do something different. I found myself on all fours, kind of leaning my torso over the side of the bed because that was the position I was most comfortable in. And I had, my husband offered to do a rebozo, and he's like, oh, let's try the double hip squeeze. And I was so trying to get through each one that I was like, don't touch me, And so I was very, I don't know, I think I was very snappy because I didn't feel as in control this time. And I kept in my mind trying to compare this labor to the previous labor. And so I was like, well, this is different. The contractions are different. And so I had to kind of bring myself back to center and be present and realize that this is a different baby and this is a different labor. And so I need to switch up my game plan to see how I'm going to get through this. And so I still wasn't sure I was in labor until probably about 3 or 4 in the morning. I started to get nauseous, and I never get nauseous. And so we both knew that this was definitely a sign that was it. And sometime I believe after that is when I noticed my mucus plug, but it was such a small, faint amount. I think I had lost it in the days leading up to being in labor. So it wasn't like one big event as in my first labor. So I'll say probably about 4 or 5 in the morning is when I asked my husband to fill up the tub because I was like, I just need to get in the water. So we put a bunch of Epsom salt in there. It was warm. It was soothing. I must have stayed in there maybe 30, 40 minutes or so. And then I was like, okay, I want to get back into bed.
And is your older son asleep this whole time?
Yeah, he's asleep. Now, I got lucky this night because he used to wake up probably 5 to 7 times a night for comfort nursings, and it was like that constantly. He woke up one time around 2 something, and my husband was able to rock him to sleep, which was a miracle.
Yeah.
And then he woke up again a couple hours later, and this time he was adamant about nursing. And so I remember I told my husband, just put him on the bed in front of me. I was still on all fours.
Wow.
And I just started saying, give me strength, give me strength, give me strength, trying to stay focused. And he nursed for maybe 3 or 4 minutes. And it took, I think I had about 2 or 3 contractions in that time. So
you were in like active labor when you were nursing?
Yeah,
wow, that's wild.
If I didn't give him some milk, it was just going to be a bunch of screaming. So I'm like, let me just
deal with it.
Bear down and do this. And then hopefully, I got lucky. He went to sleep and he didn't wake up again until like 9 the next morning.
Nice.
So I feel like when I thought of that, I feel like the body has some kind of way of signaling, because the first time being that he allowed my husband to rock him to sleep, like that's something that we never were able to do prior to that. It's almost like he intuitively knew that it was cool. And I don't know if there was a hormonal change that changed the breast milk that made him sleep a little bit longer or what, but I just find that whole process to be amazing.
Totally. I wish you had a picture. I love the image of you like over the bed nursing. I wish they had a photo of that.
I know. We didn't take any pictures. I didn't even think of it until after the baby was born.
Well, I think it's common with free birthers, if it's only your
Yep.
man, like he's not going to be thinking about taking pictures if he's the
Yeah,
only one
exactly.
there. Yeah.
And so yeah, I a couple hours after the first bath, I asked him to fill the pool up this time. And so he goes back and fills the bathtub up, and I was just going off, why'd you fill the bathtub? I told you to fill up the pool. And I'm flipping out. And by the time I got in the water, after about like 10 or 15 seconds, I was completely just calm because it was so soothing.
In the bath or the pool?
In the bathtub.
Okay.
Now we have a garden style tub, so it's pretty
nice.
big.
Yeah.
But I was just happy to have the comfort of the warm water. So stayed in there for a bit, and I did a little bit of stretching and moving around. And this time, I think I got out probably after 20 minutes or so. I just couldn't seem to really get in a position that was comfortable. But at this time, in my mind, I was still somehow convinced that I wasn't in labor. And then I thought I was in labor because my contractions were still about 17 to 20 minutes apart.
Wow.
And so went back in the room a couple hours later, got back. I told him to fill up the pool this time. I was like, make sure you actually fill up the pool. We had the hose and everything set up. He goes and fills the bathtub up again.
Oh my God, you gotta be kidding me.
Yeah, so I go back in there again. I'm like, I told you to fill up the pool.
Do you want to get divorced right now?
Seriously, at that point, I was livid. And
oh my God.
Again, he knew exactly what he was doing. So I get in the tub.
Did he not want to fill up the pool? What's the deal?
I think that he realized it would be faster to just fill up the tub, and he knew I wasn't going to stay in longer. And I think also that he had a better grasp on where I was in labor than I did, because I just remember his presence being so calm the whole time.
Nice.
He was just so zen about the whole thing.
That's awesome.
The third time I was in the tub, I was only in there for about maybe 15 minutes, and I felt this like burst of hunger. And he said, okay, let me just grab you some grapes. And that was different for me because during my first labor, I couldn't eat anything. I couldn't keep anything down. I was nauseous the whole time. And so I felt like I almost had a bit of a break, but I was just so hungry. So here I'm just cramming down these grapes in the tub. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I have the urge to push, but I don't know like if I'm in labor. And he says, he's like, if you feel the urge to push, go with it. And so I'm like, okay. So I gave about 2 or 3 pushes, and I started to feel this descending, like you could see my belly was descending. Whoa. The bulge was going lower and lower. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, is this like, at this point I realized I was in labor. I didn't feel any more pain. All I could think of was I was so ready to meet my baby.
Yeah.
And so I'm smiling. It was like something completely different came over me. And
so wait, hold on. So did you never get consistent contractions?
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Be quiet, child. Did you never get consistent contractions?
Never.
Wow.
Not during the second birth, never. They were all the way up to transition. They were 17, 20 minutes apart.
That is so wild. I love that. I love the idea. I like the image of you in the tub pushing, being like, maybe I am in labor.
Yeah. And so I was still comparing it to the prior labor. I don't know why I did that to myself, but
sure, it's normal.
So I could see my belly descending, and I remember I inserted a finger because I wanted to see if I could feel the baby's head, and I felt the entire bag of waters coming through the birth canal. So I'm like, Brian, I called my husband, and I was like, you have to feel this. And so he felt the bag of waters, and so we were all excited. And so, yeah, about a couple minutes later, my son was born, and I was kind of up on my knees, like in an erect position, which was just very different for me. And I had my husband, when the baby was crowning, I asked him to apply counter pressure to my perineum. I just felt like it was a lot of pressure, so I thought that would be a good idea, and it helped. The baby came right out, and I remember the umbilical cord was wrapped around the baby's neck, and so I unwrapped it. It was wrapped 3 times around, and we laid him on my chest, and he let out this little high-pitched squeal. It's the funniest thing ever. And I was like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't actually cry like that, because
like a little pig.
yeah, it was so funny. But oh, and I forgot to mention, we didn't know what the gender was. We decided to keep it a surprise. So
Fun. So about the umbilical cord, because that's obviously something that people are told is this super dangerous thing, but we know that it's not most of the time, and that it's very common. So when you saw the head be born and you saw the cord, did you already know what to do, or was it just instinctive? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I had done some reading and heard about the cord wrapped around, but I just saw the baby and I saw the cord and I sprung into action. I just gently took the cord from around, and I wasn't concerned so much because I know that they don't breathe through their nose until, they're out. But I just assumed everything was fine, and I don't know. I didn't have much of a thought process. I just started to unravel it, and he was quiet for maybe like 30 seconds or so. And just because his nose had fluid in it, but after I suctioned his nose really quickly, and that was it. He was letting out his little squeals.
That's beautiful. So what was your, and then what about the placenta?
So at that point, I stayed in the tub for probably a couple more minutes. We brought my oldest son in to meet his brother. He just kind of looked, and he walked back down the hall.
Yeah. He's like, I'm good.
So then in our room, we had Chuck's pads and things down. So I got into the bed, and the placenta, it took me a while. I think it took me maybe an hour to deliver the placenta. And for one reason, I was nursing the baby, and then I was just kind of reclining for a bit. So I think the position kind of took it a little bit longer. So after being in the bed for a little bit and just kind of bonding with the baby, I got up. I went in the bathroom, and I had a little bowl, and so I kind of squatted over the bowl, and placenta came right out. And I think we had the baby's umbilical cord clamped up to that point, and so we had a little tie. We put that on. So everything was very laid back. There was no rush after he was born to really do anything. We just kind of hung out. We clamped the cord after it stopped pulsating, but that was since I was there so long before delivering the placenta, we probably didn't clamp it until maybe 30, 45 minutes after he was born. Yeah, so had definitely stopped pulsing by then. Yeah. And cleanup was super easy. It was such a relaxing process. I really want women to know that if unassisted birth is something you want to do, it's totally doable. It's beautiful, and it's very calming, and not anything like what's portrayed in the media.
I know. I wish we could just call this birth and then call hospital and midwife assisted birth. This is just birth, because even the term unassisted is like, I don't know. I think it's kind of silly. Like, you had your partner there, you had your own confidence, you had nature, you had, faith. Like, there's so much, I always think about that, how we, because the default now is this heavily assisted birth, it's to even call like normal birth unassisted kind of does it like disservice,
It does.
Yeah.
And it makes it sound like it's something else outside of the norm.
Mm-hmm. Totally. So what was your prenatal care like with the little one?
I did not, let's see.
Did you see somebody at all?
I did. When I first got pregnant, we were still in the Bronx. And so I had an original, I think I had maybe 2 prenatal visits with him. When I first found out I was pregnant, I went back for one more after that. And then I had a fetal anatomy scan at 20 weeks. And that was it. We moved down. That was in, I think, January. And we moved down to Frisco in March. So at that point, we were getting settled in. And I was fine. My pregnancy was going normal, so I didn't bother finding another provider when we came here. I didn't feel like I really needed it.
And how did your guys' families respond to this choice? Did you tell them beforehand, or did you not tell them until after?
Yeah, we didn't tell anybody we were doing unassisted.
Yeah.
So I think that everyone learned a lot during my first son's birth, because my mom was there, his mom was there, and we talked to people about having a home birth prior to, and then after seeing everything was fine. It just became a kind of a normal conversation. As far as unassisted, I didn't think it would, I don't know, I just didn't want the chance of anyone saying anything negative, because I don't think that it would have been, I just don't think it would have been as well received, because people, they get afraid, and they don't know if they see birth as kind of like a medical emergency, and they think that if you're there by yourself, what if something happens and you're not qualified? And so home birth is one thing to accept. For people to accept unassisted birth, I just don't think that I would have been able to have a productive conversation around that.
So did you tell your family that you were home birthing with a midwife?
Well, I told them that I was home birthing. We didn't really get into details.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of like strategically avoiding having the whole conversation.
And then what about once the baby was born? Then did you, do they all know now?
Yeah, they all know now.
What was their reaction?
They're just like, well, their reaction was like, girl, you are crazy, but you're so strong. I admire you. And wow, I can't believe that. And so, it's been really nice just to be able to, also one benefit to not saying anything prior to is to just tell people this happened and let them see the results. And
of course,
I think they approach the conversation with a different mindset as opposed to thinking about what the possibilities are. Mm-hmm. And
totally, of course.
Yeah.
And so do you have anybody in your community there in Texas who have done this, or are you a lone ranger?
I am a lone ranger. I found some online groups. I was a part of a Facebook group called Unassisted. I think it's called Unassisted Childbirth. I can't really remember. And so I was able to talk with some of the women in there, and they were kind of cheering me on throughout the journey. And so it was nice to have that. Also, the woman who wrote Unassisted Childbirth,
Laura Shanley.
Laura Shanley, yes. I corresponded with her. Her website was very helpful. Mm-hmm. Because I wanted to know, legal things, what to do about birth certificate and things like that. And so she had a lot of free information on her site, but I also sent her an email and talked with her. And so that was nice to kind of have that as a resource.
And so did you tell, how old is the baby now?
So he's going to be 2 in August.
Okay. And so you were kind of new to Texas when you had him, right?
Very new. Mm-hmm.
So then when you started making mom friends and stuff, did you share your story, and how was that received?
No, I haven't actually told very many people. Yeah. To be honest, I'm also an entrepreneur, so I get kind of caught up here, and I don't get out as much with other parents. I try. Weekly we go to the library and stuff like that, but I haven't had as many. I don't really have, I will say, a supportive group of mom friends. I have other friends, but they're not people with children. Mm-hmm. There is, however, a community here. I'm in Frisco, and Plano is a neighboring city. So they have a shop where they sell baby wrap, different types of wraps and carriers for babies. And they do all kinds of moms groups and stuff like that. And that's something that I would like to participate in. It's just here kind of getting settled in. Everything kind of happened so fast.
Yeah,
and
seriously.
Us having one vehicle, it gets a little difficult.
Mm-hmm. And do you think you will have any more children?
Yeah, we're going to wait probably about 3 years.
Nice.
And sorry about that. And yeah, I'm hoping maybe when my oldest son is 4 or 5, that would be a good time.
Oh, how old is he?
So he'll be 3 in July.
Oh, they're little together.
Yeah, so I had the first home birth was in July of 2014. The second one was in August of 2015. So I didn't have much of a
Oh,
break.
yeah. Wow. That is very close together. Oh, man.
Yeah.
So was that like a pretty big surprise when you were pregnant again?
Yeah, I found out I think I found out when my son was 4 months,
Oh,
and
my gosh.
my first response was, I was
Yeah.
crying, and I felt I had a lot of emotions around it. I felt like this is unfair to my baby, and I don't know why I thought that. I felt like I was somehow taking away from him, but I nursed him throughout the entire pregnancy. Everyone told me, "Oh, your milk's going to dry up at some point, so just be prepared for that," and that never happened. And
And do you tandem
we
nurse or is he off feeding now?
I actually just weaned him about a month ago.
How'd that go?
And
So you were
well,
tandem nursing for 2 years.
yes, ma'am.
Wow. How was that? That's wild. No wonder you didn't get out to the other mom groups.
Yeah,
You had
it's
your
a
hands
lot.
full.
Yeah, that's true. It was a lot. It got a little exhausting at sometimes, especially when my youngest was first born. Can you imagine my oldest waking up 6, 7 times a night, and I have this new baby. I'm not getting enough sleep. So the first few months were kind of rough.
Yeah.
And
Did you just have them both in the room with you?
yeah, most of the time my husband ended up sleeping on the couch most of the time because
Yeah.
there just wasn't enough space, you know. But yeah, I had both babies in there with me so I wouldn't have to go back and forth down the hall. Eventually, I got my oldest son to sleep in his own room. And I had a lot of emotions around that because I'm like, oh, he's all by himself in there. But it was okay. He did fine, you know. And at the first whimper, I was down the hall nursing him, and I come back in with the baby. So I don't know. It was like it took some superhuman strength because I
Seriously.
remember feeling very, very, very exhausted for those first, I'll say, 4 months after my youngest was born. And then I started to get more into the hang of things. My oldest started to sleep through the night, and then that was right around the time. See, the thing with newborns, obviously, is they sleep a lot. So right when my oldest started to sleep through the night, the little one started waking up constantly. So I'm like, no. But yeah. So the breastfeeding journey it's been awesome because I've learned a lot about I guess self-care.
That's what I was going
And
to ask. Yeah. How did you navigate self-care with tandem nursing for so long?
making sure that I force myself to take a nap when I have a quiet moment, because I'm the person that if I have something I want to do, I will just keep plowing through it because the kids are asleep. And so it's taken me a little bit of time to just give myself permission to take a nap, taking more baths. And now I get out of the house a lot more because for the first year, I was kind of cooped up in here because I was so busy with trying to run the business and also be present for my sons. And I felt guilty if I wasn't there with them. And so I started going to like a women's breakfast group. I meet up with some friends
Nice.
once a month. We do that. And then I started going to a meditation group. I went there on Wednesday nights. And now I'm doing all kinds of stuff. So,
So was there ever a point with the older one where you were like, oh, it would just be so much easier to wean him so that I could just be feeding one baby? Like what was it in you that was so willing to persevere?
that's a great question. I did feel like that sometimes where I was just like, oh, I can't do this anymore. But then I thought about, okay, well then what's the alternative? Stick him on formula, put him on cow's milk? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. And so I would have conversations with myself. This is what I said I was going to do. This is why I said I was going to do it. I want the bonding experience, first of all, to be able to have that bonding experience with my son. I also want to be able to give him the antibodies and the great things that they get through breast milk, all the benefits of, brain development and also what would go through his mind if I were to just cut him off? You know, like, how would he feel emotionally? And why is he nursing in the first place? Most of his nursings were comfort nursings. You know, he didn't need the milk. And so I had to just ask myself, is there a reason to cut off this source of comfort that he has when he's just 1.5, 2 years old, you know? And so I had to have those conversations a lot because I'm human, you know, I get tired, but
yeah, it's hard work.
I'm like, I can do this, you know, like, yeah, it's
temporary
it's
in the end of the, you know, in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Yeah. And so just remembering why I chose to breastfeed in the first place. So my goal was to breastfeed until my children are 3 and then let them make their decision if they want to wean after that. That sounds noble and all, but so I weaned my son about a month ago. He'll be 3 in July. So I almost got there, but
yeah,
it's a lot, you know.
So
and
how did the weaning go while his little brother's still feeding? So he still sees that. Was that challenging?
For the first like 2 days, he seemed like he was a little bit jealous. But what we did is I nursed him during the daytime when he went down for his nap. And at night, I allowed my husband to put him to sleep. So he'd read him some books and sang to him and whatnot. And so that went well for a couple of days. And so then during the afternoons, I started to just hold him close to me. And we'd sit in the chair and I'd sing to him. And at first he was looking like, hey, where's the milk? You know, like, what are we doing in this chair?
Give me what I want. So was he like reaching for your breast and you were denying
he was just kind of nestling his face in. And sometimes he would kind of look at me like, what are we waiting here for? You know, but he's a pretty cool kid. He went with it. And he would lay down and it took him a minute to go to sleep. I could hear him in there talking and, you know, laughing or whatever. But after maybe a week or so, he's cool now. Like when I take him in for a nap during the days, I just sing a couple songs to him. Actually, about 3 days ago, he stopped me in the middle of the song and he says, Mom. And I'm like, yeah. He said, close the door. He wanted me to leave.
I'm good.
Yeah. And I was like, okay.
That's hilarious.
Little Mr. Independent.
Yeah.
So he's done really well.
Well, you know, and it really speaks to your perseverance because, you know, I mean, kids who are breastfed and properly bonded to their moms are independent, you know, they are like that. And so you put the, you know, probably at sometimes very grueling work in to give of yourself so much for so long, but it's obviously paying off and will continue to pay off. Yeah.
Well, thanks. That means a lot.
You'll continue to see it. And yeah, and give yourself that credit because it's very real. Like they will be healthier. They are healthier. They will continue to be healthier. But also just the comfort of being independent is not random. That is like earned, you know, and in our culture, we have it so backwards. Like we don't, but most people have it so backwards because they're coming out of those generations of cry it out and that kids are manipulative and, you know, all of this like bullshit, you know, whereas you're like, no, I'm going to actually follow my maternal instincts and care for my children and then reap the benefits of it as they grow up. You know, because a lot of women are literally told not to tandem nurse. They're told stop breastfeeding when you're pregnant. You know, they're actually told this stuff. So I'm happy that we touched on that part of your story because I'm definitely going to include that because it's just, you know, I've worked with women who want to keep nursing their baby while they're pregnant and their doctor's telling them not to or their, you know, mom's telling them not to. So, yeah.
Yeah, but my son's pediatrician told me his weight was fine, but she said you have to be careful because your milk is going to decrease and it's not going to be enough to feed him. And it just wasn't true. And I went online looking for anything to reinforce this belief that I could feed my baby throughout pregnancy. And I couldn't find really many articles or anything of people talking about it. So I should have put it on the blog. But yeah, definitely more people need to know you absolutely can nurse throughout the entire pregnancy.
Well, and he, eventually was eating other foods, right? He was.
Yeah, he had solid food. He started a little early. I've started him at 4 months. But yeah, he was.
You're like, you find out you're pregnant and you're like, you're going to start eating food now. That's funny.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think maybe I was so nervous because of listening to the pediatrician saying, well, you have to be careful, make sure he's getting enough calories. And so, yeah, my plan was to wait until 6 months, but at 4 months, he started eating like little carrots and things like that.
Totally. Yeah, I'd be nervous too if someone was telling me that. Absolutely. Wow, what a story. So cool. It's just so, I love how simplistic this story can be for so many women, that it's like you already had the intuition to have a home birth. You tried it the midwifery way. You were like, I'm good. And just did it yourself with your partner. And he sounds like he was just so wonderful during it. I love it. Such a beautiful story. Anything else you want to add to it?
All I can say is that one thing I've told a few people that told me they're interested in home birth and their partner would never buy into it. I had the most rational thinking partner ever who would never have considered that. And just by allowing him to see some resources and the documentaries really helped. So I think if you're in a situation where your partner doesn't understand or support home birth or unassisted birth, just gathering as much of those materials as you can to make it kind of fun and entertaining for them to learn can help them to maybe come around and see that you're not the only person on the planet who thinks that way, that there's a whole bunch of people. And just learning the history a little bit about midwifery and how women birthed before the 50s and, all of that helps. And also going with my gut, I learned to just trust. And I knew about unassisted birth before I had my first, but I'm like, well, it's my first time. Let me just get some help. And, I've learned now to listen to what your heart is telling you, because I feel like that's always going to be the best course of action.
Yeah, definitely. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. You too. Bye.
Bye. That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Free Birth Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.